I was asked, why do I hate Obama so much? Let's see, I could think of about 13 trillion reasons why I should hate him. But I really hate him because he's a racially divisive, race-baiting, lying maggot prick. That's why I hate him. He's basically an embarrassment to any black or minority who has obtained their goals through hard work, creativity, tenacity, and pride, without the use of affirmative action or having to say that this happened to me just because. I mean, let's not play games here. I mean, racism is still very prevalent in America. But that's not the reason why people hate Obama. They hate him because he's overreached. He's lied about everything that he has said that he was going to do. And here he is now, he's appealing to the Latinos, telling them not to stay home on November 2nd. But Latinos, this is what he had to say about you in his book. He says, never emulate the white men and brown men whose fate didn't speak to my own. It was into my father's image, the black man, son of Africa, that I packed all the attributes that I sought in myself. The attributes of Martin and Malcolm, Du Bois and Mandela. But brown men, your fates don't speak to his. This is what he said in his book, just so what he wrote it about 3 years ago. Here's some other statements that he made. He said that he ceased to advertise his mother's race at the age of 12 or 13, when I began to suspect that by doing so I was ingratiating myself to whites. And yet, even as I imagined myself following Malcolm's call, one line in the book stayed with me. He spoke of a wish that he'd once had, the wish that the white blood that ran through him, thereby an act of violence, might somehow be expunged. He also said desperate times called for desperate measures, and for many blacks, times were chronically desperate. If nationalism could create a strong and effective insularity, deliver on its promise of self-respect, then the hurt that it might cause well-meaning whites, or the inner turmoil that it caused people like me, would be of little consequence. He said, Ray assured me that we would never talk about whites as whites in front of whites, without knowing exactly what we were doing, without knowing that there might be a price to pay. It was usually an effective tactic, one of those tricks I had learned. People were satisfied, so long as you were courteous and smiled, and made no sudden moves. They were more than satisfied, they were relieved. Such a pleasant surprise to find a well-mannered young black man who didn't seem angry all of the time. Well, he sure as hell has changed that outlook on him. He said the emotion between the races could never be pure. Even love was tarnished by the desire to find in the other some element that was missing in ourselves. Whether we sought out our demons or salvation, the other race would always remain just that, menacing, alien, and apart. He said that hate hadn't gone away, blaming white people, some cruel, some ignorant, sometimes a single face, sometimes just a faceless image of a system claiming power over our lives. This is what he really thinks about you. This includes you too, dumbass white liberals. Okay, let's see what his race-baiting wife had to say about this moon calf. She says, as a black man, Barack could get shot going to the gas station. The lens through which I see the world is the lens I grew up with. Barack knows that we're going to have to make sacrifices. We're going to have to change our conversation. We're going to have to change our traditions, change our history. She says fear, fear again, raising its ugly head, fear of everything, fear of losing, fear of getting hurt, fear that this presidency could get ugly, fear that this would hurt our family, fear. She said, this is what she had to say at the NAACP meeting. When so many of our children still attend crumbling schools and a black child is still far more likely to go to prison than a white child, I think that the founders of this organization will agree that our work is not yet done. Now, I want to dissect that ominous speech because we want to start with what's going on in the inner cities and the ghetto. Where the black representatives serve in those areas? When they've fallen short of the budget, what feeble excuse do they give you? When each school is allotted from the government a certain amount for the school year per child. Are the black teachers using the funds effectively? Is there a paper trail, receipts, list of items purchased? Is there proper accounting within the school as well as within the district? Why haven't the schools been renovated? And why did the Democrats turn down school vouchers? Why don't you ask your Democratic representatives that? I'll tell you why they turned down the school vouchers. It's because of the unions, specifically the teachers union. Those school vouchers that they reject could be used for the deficiencies in the inner city schools. But they don't tell you about those vouchers that they turn down. They just want more money, more power, and more entitlements. Damn it, they make me sick to my damn stomach. She says, also, the stuff, well, this will happen, she was with Mika, Morning Joe, and Mika was asking her why the black community was trailing Hillary in the polls. They were voting for Hillary. She says, I'm not worried about that. Blacks will eventually wake up and get it. But what we're dealing with is the fear, the natural fear possibility. The stuff we're seeing in the polls has played out my whole life. Always being told by someone I'm not ready, I can't do something, my scores aren't high enough. There's always that doubt in the back of the minds of people of color who've been oppressed and who haven't been given real opportunities, that you believe that somehow people are better than you. I never was taught that. My father never told me that a white person was better than me or that anybody was better than me. I never felt that a person was better than me and that I doubted whatever I could do within myself. You know, this is the bullshit that I'm talking about that these people are doing here. She says, deep down inside, you doubt whether you can do it because all you've been told is no, wait, that's all you hear. And she even admitted it to in her own self that her scores were low. Yet they admitted her into school. Why? It had to be affirmative action if her scores weren't high enough to get into the damn school. And yet here she is complaining. Man, she said, now here you go, black people. She says, attending Princeton has probably forced black alumni to compete intellectually with whites more than with blacks. And thus they have probably become more familiar with whites intellectually. But in other activities, they are more likely to have gained familiarity with whites if they do not spend time with whites in other activities besides intellectual ones. She said, I'd hope that these findings would help me conclude that despite the high degree of identification with whites as a result of the educational and occupational path that black Princeton alumni follow, the alumni would still maintain a certain level of identification with the black community. However, these findings do not support this possibility. So there you go, black middle class America, black poor, minority plebeians. She no longer identifies with your black ass. She just said it right here. Well, this is my book, but I got this from her thesis. Okay? Need to wake the hell up. I'm really tired of these people. I'm sick and tired of Michelle, and then talking about Bill Clinton. Now, this fool, he was a racist if ever was one. In 1989, he was sued for permitting the harassment of black voters, the 1965 Voting Rights Act. 1988, a U.S. Supreme Court finds Bill guilty of trying to overturn the election of a black state representative in favor of a white Democrat. A federal judge ordered Bill to devise boundaries in an effort to give black voters maximum strength to vote. 1988, Bill tried to replace an elected black state representative with a white one. This was stopped by the U.S. Supreme Court. He also gave approval to the police to racially profile Hispanics. A federal judge ruled the program to be unconstitutional. So he attempted to challenge the election of a black man named Ben McGee, who was elected as a state legislator, but his challenge was ignored. And in 1990, the NAACP, Legal Defense Fund, sued Bill for failing to enforce the Voting Rights Act. I don't understand this, man. Now, there was this William J. Fulbright, one of the biggest racists and separatists and bigots ever was in Congress. Bill calls him his mentor and said that the American political system produced this remarkable man, and my state did. And I'm real proud of it. Okay, what else about Bill? In regards to a black representative, he said a few years ago this guy would have been getting us coffee. In November 2nd, 1994 BET television interview, Bill made the following comment. African Americans watch the same news at night that ordinary Americans do. What the hell was he trying to intimate there? He said, and lastly, he stuck his foot in his mouth by saying, people only vote for people who look like them. This is what he had to say about America. If the personal freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution inhibit the government's ability to govern the people, we should look to limit those guarantees. He said when we got organized as a country and we wrote a fairly radical Constitution with a radical Bill of Rights,